you, when you came, you said, "I'd die for you, Miss Sarah," and I was like, "What?" I remember that. I just
and
stood
still
there.
would, of course. Just find me a drain pipe and I'll be at it.
I wonder if I might ask you both a question. I hesitate because it's rather an unusual question and I want you to consider it seriously.
Of course, sir. You far away? Yes, far away.
Do you think you'd be afraid if you saw a ghost?
It's a magical movie that's been thrilling audiences for decades. A treasured family favourite since 1972, this is a celebration of a British classic. This is the story of the amazing Mr Blunden. The Amazing Mr Blunden is based on the novel The Ghosts by Antonia Barber. Set in the early 1900s, producer Barry Levinson and director Lionel Jeffries really set the scene with this Dickensian opening. Director Lionel Jeffries had a huge success with his previous film, The Railway Children, and was himself a great character actor. Who could forget this performance from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang?
Good afternoon, miss. Sorry I can't stop. I'm off to India. Going to have a cup of tea with a Maharaja. Cheerio.
Even though Lionel Jeffries himself could have played Mr Blunden, that role instead went to Lawrence Naismith, a great British TV, stage and movie actor, fondly remembered for his role as Argus in the classic film Jason and the Argonauts. He also graces our screens at least once a year in that classic musical version of Scrooge, where he played Mr Fezziwig. Naismith also appeared on stage and in countless TV dramas.
You're going to lose your place. He wrote to me. Could you talk some sense into this child?
After wending his way through the London street market, Mr Blunden arrives at the house of Mrs Allen and her 3 children. And once they're alone...
Do you think you'd be afraid if you saw a ghost?
I think, quite honestly, sir, I'd be a little bit scared.
The role of Lucy was played brilliantly by Lynn Frederick, who was famously married to the great Peter Sellers. A great actor in her own right, Lynn Frederick's probably best remembered for portraying Catherine Howard in this performance of King Henry and his 6 wives.
Not inexhaustible. If it were, we would have given you a public wedding at St Paul's.
Forgive me.
The role of Jamie went to talented young actor Gary Miller, who would go on to play Eddie in the TV series The Strauss Family. However, Gary Miller would never grace our screens again. Mr Blunden tells the children that they'll soon be moving to a remote country house and to expect some ghostly goings-on. He tells them that ghosts are sometimes people coming back for help.
Yes, madam. Can I be of service?
The family arrive at the offices of Blunden, Claverton and Smith, much to the surprise of the clerk, Mr Clutterbuck, who doesn't know why they're there.
The job has not yet been advertised, madam. How did you come to hear about it?
An old gentleman came to see me.
Jamie, look. It's Mr Blunden.
The children notice a portrait of Mr Blunden on the office wall. Could this be the same Mr Blunden that came to the house that night?
He's the one who came to see us.
I'm afraid I've caught you out there, Sonny Jim. The portrait is in fact of Mr. Blunden's great-grandfather who died about 100 years ago, and I doubt if our Mr. Blunden came to see you.
Elmer Bernstein's fabulous music score really opens up as the family arrive at the village. And once again, more talk of ghostly goings-on from our local.
Langley Park?
Langley Park.
Yes, Mr. Clutterbuck. Don't ask me to help with the bags like the times before, will you? Ghoulies and ghosties and long-leggedy beasties that place has got. Don't ask me to help, Mr. Clutterbuck.
Proceed, Herbert.
The role of the clerk, Mr. Clutterbuck, went to the great Scottish character actor Graham Crowden, who in later life would enjoy a huge success in the TV sitcom Waiting for God.
Lord most holy.
Farce.
O God most mighty.
Poor old Sid.
O holy
Where's
and
his
merciful
family?
Saviour.
He never existed.
Thou most worthy judge eternal.
It's not Sid.
Suffer us not at
It's
our
not
last
Sydney.
hour.
It's
For any
Harry
pains of
Palmer.
death to fall from thee.
You sure? Oh, I couldn't stand Harry Palmer.
The Amazing Mr Blunden was filmed in and around the grounds of Pinewood Studios, and also around the village of Hedgeley in Buckinghamshire. The great house used in the movie is actually Heatherden Hall and is situated on the grounds of Pinewood Studios. It's been used for many, many movie productions. Shortly after arriving at Langley Park, Lucy decides to explore the great house. There she finds a burnt-out library and a massive sweeping staircase. One day, she hears some ghostly children laughter. She eventually meets the housekeeper, Mrs. Tuttle, who tells her,
"Nothing to be afraid of, dear. Them's only kiddies."
Before long, Lucy and James do meet two ghostly children who appear from nowhere.
At last! We have found someone with a little good sense.
I beg your pardon?
You didn't run away screaming. You didn't run away.
Well, I did. First I did.
The ghostly figures turn out to be Sarah and George Latimer, and far from being ghosts, they're actually time travellers from 100 years ago. In a flashback sequence, Sarah tells the story of how they've managed to come forward in time to 1918. Sarah explains that after the death of their parents, her and Georgie are put into the care of their incompetent Uncle Bertie and family solicitor, Mr Blunden.
Do stop snivelling in front of the servants. It'll do no good.
We are introduced to Arabella, Uncle Bertie's simple-minded fiancée, and her evil parents, Mr and Mrs Wickens.
Master Georgie is the only member of the family with money. £30,000 to be exact, left to him by his father William. Would have been mine, of course, but being only a half-brother, Georgie gets it.
Mrs Wickens learns that young Master Georgie is the only family member with money, unless he were to die.
Get in here before you catch your death of cold.
Catch their death of cold.
The plan to freeze the children is overheard by Tom, the gardener's boy. With the help of an outside drain pipe, Tom, however, makes sure the children are kept warm.
Quick, Tom, it's making.
Right then. Good night, miss. Night, Master Georgie.
Good night, Tom. Hard beds.
One night, while searching for scraps of food, Sarah and Georgie overhear Mrs Wickens' terrible plan to kill them.
£50,000 if he snuffs it. It'll be all our darling little Bella's. If that Georgie snuffs it. Her as well. That stuck-up Sarah.
Did he mean to kill us, Sarah?
An accident must befall them. Can't wait forever. An accident. A quick accident, my love. And you are going to help me.
By far, the most memorable performance in the entire movie comes from Diana Dawes, the silver screen legend, who here is almost unrecognisable as the evil Mrs Wickens. Diana Dawes had an amazing career.
Oh, Charlie, I'm so miserable when we quarrel.
Well,
legendary glamour girl of the screen, Diana Dawes, this is your life.
In 1982, Diana Dawes was the subject of This Is Your Life. During the show, she would be reunited with the director of The Amazing Mr Blunden.
Writer, director, and currently starring in the comedy hit Tom, Dick and Harriet, Lionel Jeffries.
I rang her up one night and I said, it's a part, I'm not too sure you're going to be happy about it, because I said, I'm going to destroy all that sex symbol rubbish. I'll tell you what it is. She said, what's the name of the picture? And I said, it's The Amazing Mr Blunden. She said, I see, you want me to play Mr Blunden. I said, no, it's Mrs Wickens. Oh. So she said, well, go on. And I said, well, we're going to pad you out to about 28 stone. She said, go on. I said, we're going to shove a wig on you, flea-bitten old grey wig. She said, go on. Anything else? I said, yes. To cap it all, we're going to stick a rubber wart on your nose with hair sticking out of it. She said, is that it? I said, that's it. She said, I'll do it.
Mark Granger, who played Georgie, disappeared from our TV screens. However, Rosalind Landor, who played Sarah, continued her acting career and enjoyed many a role on stage, on TV and in movies. She's also a voiceover artist and an award-winning narrator.
And as for you...
What?
Why did you have to tell them this magic wall can give them more than meat and potatoes? No, we'll never get a lick of work out of them.
Madam, have you ever considered a career in security?
Young lady, a hot cup of coffee, for I observe you are shivering.
It is not cold, which makes me shiver.
What then?
It is terror.
One night, whilst locked in their bedroom, Sarah and Georgie see some ghostly handwriting appearing on the window.
When Mark and I are in the bedroom looking at the window pane and the finger is going, look in library. That was one of the stagehands on the other side of the glass, literally doing this back to front. They chose the best guy who could go back to front with his handwriting, and he was popped on the other side, so that's how
What
they...
does it mean, Georgie? What on earth is it? Come on, where? The library, of course, silly. Soppy Meekin didn't lock the door.
Once inside the library, the children find an arrow pointing to a leather-bound old book. Inside the book is a potion.
Perhaps this is our chance, Georgie. Look, to make the mind still, to escape from time. There, Georgie, to escape. Someone is trying to tell us how to escape. Not to another place, but to another time. It's because he's so young.
By the time Sarah has finished telling the story, Georgie has already returned to the past. James and Lucy agree to help Sarah by brewing the potion and going back in time to try and save them.
Bring the potion and meet me here at sunset tomorrow. Promise you'll not fail us, Jamie. Promise. Promise. Please promise.
Lucy, I've just had a brilliant idea. What? All we have to do is hunt in the churchyard.
Why?
Well, Lucy, sometimes you really are dim. If none of the gravestones have Sarah and Georgie's names on, then we shall know they didn't die. Don't you see? We shall know in advance that we've saved them.
Oh, I see. We can go off into the past, knowing everything will be all right.
Yes, I told you it was a brilliant idea. Shh! Quiet, you children.
The children eventually find Sarah and Georgie's gravestone.
Sarah Catherine Latimer, George Richard Latimer, died April the 21st, 1818.
That's tomorrow, Lucy. Tomorrow. Only 100 years ago.
That's right. It were 100 year ago.
The church sexton tells James and Lucy how the children died.
The fire it were while they were abed. A furnace of a fire. Started in the library, they say. The books burned like tinder. And nobody could get to them because of the heat, you see, poor little mites.
The sexton also tells them that Tom, the gardener's son, is also killed trying to save them.
He climbed the drain pipe to the bedroom window, but somehow the pipe gave way, and he come plunging down. He was killed.
The character of Tom was played by Stuart Lock in one of his most earliest roles. Stuart Lock went on to become a successful production manager, voiceover artist, and most famously voiced the character of Rufus in Dreamstone.
But where does it go?
To the Dreamstone, come on!
I thought the Dreamstone was just a legend. Do you have permission from the Dreammaker to go up here?
Permission? Oh, I don't need permission. I come up here all the time. I'm his right hand, nope.
Roll.
Yes, I'd been in the industry for 7 years prior to making Mr Blunden, so I was aware and knew my way around a little.
Oh, bless
Very young at the time, of course. And so, yes, I had a reading at the Mayfair offices of Hemdale with the director and the producer was there. I was spoken through the script, and I just read it, and I said, shall I do this in a bit of an accent or whatever you wanted? And he said, yeah, just sort of do whatever you feel you would like to. So I did, which was great, I have that freedom. And I said, shall I do it again? He said, no. He said, but could you go to page 72 and read that section? Which I had 5 minutes reading and did it. And then he called in the producer, and we did the scene again. And it's very, very rare. He said, that was really good. He said, you've got the role.
And then there was the Guardian, an old gentleman, lawyer or something he were. Well, he was at the house that night, and he was on his way back to London when his carriage broke down. And when he seen the flames in the distance, he come riding back. And when he seen that they were dead, he took on cruel, real cruel. Too late, too late, too late, he kept saying.
So Lucy and James now know what they've got to do. Brew the potion, stop the fire, and save Sarah, Georgie and Tom. They brew the potion and meet Sarah in the gardens.
I thought you changed your minds.
Where's Georgie?
He had a slight disagreement with Mrs. Wickens. She's locked him in the cellar. Tom is guarding him for me while I'm away.
London, remember? Camden Town.
Oh, hello.
Oh, yes.
All of a sudden, Mr Blunden appears out of nowhere.
We haven't much time, my dears.
Excuse me, sir. But are you dead too?
I am the dead part of Blunden. The other part of me was the Blunden who wouldn't listen to the pleas of Sarah and Georgie. The Blunden who failed them.
Mr Blunden promises the children that he'll keep them safe back in the past. They take the potion and then start to travel back in time, back to 100 years ago.
See, it's working. It's working.
It's time to go.
You see, by the way you dress it, you don't come from hereabouts. I suppose you wouldn't have
The potion works. They arrive back in the past and meet Tom and Sarah in the stable. Unfortunately, this takes them right in the path of Mrs Wickens.
Sarah! Sarah!
Lucy and James have become invisible to Mrs Wickens.
So there you are. And all alone, I see. Who was here with you a moment ago? One of them vulgar servants, I'll be bound. Please, shut up!
God help us! The arm's gone mad! Get back!
Are we ghosts? Did it work?
Yes.
But Tom could see us. Why can't she?
Too old, too insensitive. She didn't see us. Mrs. Wickens didn't see us. Ghosts, we really are.
Meekin! Meekin! Yes, Mrs. Wickens!
The role of the downtrodden Meekin was played to perfection by Deddy Davis. Denny Davis was a very familiar face to British television viewers in both comedic and serious acting roles. She was also cast in Lionel Jeffries' previous film, The Railway Children. One of her last acting roles was in Sky TV's Stella. The role of Arabella went to Madeline Smith, a very accomplished stage, TV and movie actor. She was also a great comedy performer and was used heavily throughout the 70s in light entertainment shows.
Letting on to the other girls. Well, in times like these, it's every girl for herself, isn't it?
New from Superstar.
Now somewhat of a Hammer House of Horror legend, The Amazing Mr Blunden was a far cry from Madeline Smith's earlier, more adult work.
No, it's too small for me.
No, I don't
yes,
want
you
to.
must. Take the other dress. I want you to. I want you to.
No.
I say,
Go
put
away.
the other dress.
No.
Yes.
Yeah, this was an incredibly innocent film for me after that. I had already made...
Of the vampire lovers.
Yes, but The Taste of Blood of Dracula, and I do get out of sync here with Theatre of Blood. Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell, had I done that yet?
The Amazing Mr Blunden is an underrated and under-celebrated film. Here, Madeline explains why.
Been being told since that it was considered too frightening.
Right.
And that's why it did not get the showing, the publicity, you know, the full frontal, if you like, in the cinemas that Railway Children did, because I don't know whether you all agree with me, but I think it's a magnificent film and really does compare very well to the Railway Children.
Lucy and James, now completely invisible to adults, get a shock as Arabella comes down the stairs.
I think she looks like a stuffed pink pig.
Blimey, she's having one of her turns. She can't see us, can she? She's only got the mind of a child. I think perhaps she can.
Because of her childlike mind, Arabella can half see Lucy and James.
Ghosts! I swear, Mama dear, I can see right through them.
Hush now, Bella. There ain't nobody there.
They're there. There.
Hear me, Bella. I shall haunt you until you release little Georgie from the cellar.
Don't overdo it.
The role of Uncle Bertie went to James Villiers, a British character actor whose face was very familiar on British television. Known for his plummy articulation, Villiers had many roles.
5 days ago, our spy ship, St George's, sunk in the Ionian Sea. She was equipped with ATAC, our own submarines, and we ordered to attack our own cities.
My name is Bond. James Bond.
Now, my little sausage, who is after you?
We are.
Oh my God. Mama, 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 Mama.
Mama, 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 Mama.
David Lodge had been a British character actor since the 50s and normally played authoritative types. The disturbing quality he brought to this character really brought Mr Wickens to life.
What is all that noise downstairs?
They're having dinner.
The children realise that it's all starting to happen. Mr Blunden had arrived to take Uncle Bertie to London, leaving the Wickenses to carry out their evil
There'll be
plan.
no more silk dresses for you.
Mr. Blunden, oh, sir, you must
You
listen
think
to us.
you're doing?
Uncle Bertie won't heed us.
He doesn't care if we snuff it.
Listen to her.
How dare you? You are two mischievous children. Your uncle is a very kind and considerate guardian, and you should be more careful.
James decides to go down and speak to Mr Blunden himself. After all, he brought them there, didn't he?
There are two of you. Two Mr. Blundens.
Yes, James, my boy, there are two of us. Though we're both the same man, he wouldn't see or hear you.
Very difficult, Mr. Blunden. We came to help you, but there's so little we can do.
It's not yet the time. Everything must go on as before.
The children watch as the two Mr Blundens merge as one. Arabella gives Sarah and Georgie a sedative so they won't wake up during the fire. they're locked inside the bedroom. Then, in one of the most funniest scenes in the movie, Lucy and James have to try and get the key from Mrs. Wickens.
Do something quick.
Diana Dawes, who obviously we know for so many different roles and was the kind of British kind of blonde bombshell, I guess, was what made of, but wasn't afraid of kind of these more kind of grotesque roles. As she kind of
Rosalind and I can really talk about this. Rosalind, you first.
Definitely, because she, I know that Lionel had to really cajole her, didn't he, into doing this?
Oh, that I didn't know.
Yes, my understanding is that he really spent a lot of time talking her through, and at that point in her career, she had not worked for a little while.
True.
And this was an opportunity, and he was really instrumental in allaying any fears she would have about how she would come across to an audience, and just so believed in her ability to create this role and invest it and inhabit it, which of course she did. I mean, all of you, every single piece that she had up there, you were all laughing.
Oh, she was amazing.
Because she was so brilliant.
She was,
fabulous.
Wasn't she? And she made no fuss whatsoever in the makeup room. No. On went the warts, in she came, the blonde bombshell.
Yep.
Hour later, there she was.
Yes.
My mama.
Consummately kind, right?
She was wonderful. Actually, I had the great pleasure of working with her several times in my life. But I think she was magnificent in this. I was so overawed and overjoyed to play her daughter.
Having failed to get the key, Lucy and James have to find another way of getting the children out.
Bundles of wood, Lucy, the fire is starting.
Oh, no. Come on.
Lucy and James realise that Mr. Wickens is starting the fire.
Listen, we have to separate. I'll get an axe and break down the nursery door, but you must stay here and warn Tom. His life depends on it, Luce.
Lucy waits for Tom, knowing that he's going to climb the drain pipe and be killed.
Is she all right, missus? She's safe then?
Not yet, they're still in the nursery. James is trying to break down the door. Tom, you mustn't! It's David, your fault! Tom, it isn't safe, really. You'll want to be killed, I know you will!
Happen I will be killed, but there's some as a person I would gladly die for.
It went up there if you're killed!
Tom still climbs the drain pipe. It becomes clear what causes the drain pipe to come loose and kill Tom.
Mr. Griffin, don't pull the drain pipe. I know what's going to happen. I've been told. I know
it. Sarah! Sarah, are you all right?
Out the window, for pity's sake, Sarah! Sarah!
But this time, James is on hand to save Tom. The fire sequence was shot over many days and is presented here without any of Elmer Bernstein's fabulous music score. This helps to bring the audience in and to bring a sense of reality to the movie. It's also in contrast to the previous main scene where James and Lucy are trying to get the key from Mrs. Wickens, because in that scene it was the live action soundtrack that had been completely removed.
When you look at, we were just talking about how dangerous the fire sequences are.
I was going to ask
very
about
dangerous.
That, yeah.
And when we think about it, and they were not only the camera angles and everything they used, but there were pipes on the floor. The scenes where Gary's going up to get Mark with Lawrence Naismith taking him up there, they were just bare metal pipes with holes in, with flame coming out.
And these were filmed over a series of days, weren't they?
Oh, yes. I think that whole sequence took about a week in total.
It was a
to film.
false front, wasn't
Yes,
it? I remember
yes.
a facade.
This was at Pinewood, was it?
It was the actual studio, because Pinewood, probably most of you know, was originally a very beautiful country house. I can't remember who inhabited it, but somebody very grand. And so they were actually setting fire to the main part of the old building, which is still there, and still much used.
Yep.
So it survived.
And obviously today, if that were being filmed, I guess the health and safety would be really ramped up. But can you remember much about it in terms of...
Yes, I remember the firemen were there. Right there. I can remember in my own eye line, I could see them going.
Yes.
I think they probably would have done it these days, the technical ability of the computer graphics. I think they probably would have done it that way, but in 72, that facility wasn't available.
James manages to save Tom and Sarah, but Georgie is still trapped upstairs. Just then, Mr Blunden returns.
I would, Georgie, I would.
Jane. We will go together. The fire will not touch you. Now is the time. Look straight ahead. And don't be afraid.
I can't see nothing.
Look straight ahead.
Tom, where's Georgie? Sarah?
At last. Thank you, my dear.
Jamie! Georgie! Mr Blunden, you promised to guard them, you promised! Georgie! Oh, Georgie!
Georgie!
Jamie! You're too late, Mr Blunden. You're always too late. I won't go back without Jamie. I will not go without Jamie. I won't go without him. I won't go without him. I won't go without him.
Jamie?
Jamie? Jamie! Jamie!
Lucy returns to the present, but did Jamie?
Jamie? Jamie! Jamie! Jamie? 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 Jamie!
James is found, but he isn't waking up. Lucy decides to check the churchyard to see if Sarah and Georgie's gravestones are still there. Sarah and Georgie's gravestones are missing, and instead, another one in its place.
Good shepherd, giveth his life for his sheep. Frederick Percival Blunden gave his life to save the children in his care. April the 21st, 1818. Yesterday, 100 years ago. We did it.
Amy did it.
After a short while, James wakes up.
Lucy, did we? Did we?
Yes, Jamie. I went to the churchyard and the children's graves have gone. We did it, Jamie. You did it.
You help. A bit.
Near the end of the film, Mr Clutterbuck returns with some exciting, amazing news.
Briefly, our Mr Blunden, for some unknown reason, raised himself from his bed of mental misery, hurled himself as best he could last Thursday, 4:30 it was, into the office and said, "Get them papers on the marriage of Miss Sarah and Master Tom." And here they are.
It seems that we are related to these people. They were great-grandparents of Daddy's. Just over 100 years ago, they lived here, and then they went to America.
Not over 100 years ago. Exactly 100 years ago, Mrs. Allen. All will be revealed.
Mr Clutterbuck tells the family that they now own the property and that Sarah and Tom were distant relatives. But that's not the only surprise.
Mr Blunden. Mr Blunden. Mr Blunden. Which one? Which one?
We three kings of Orient are, my dear.
The Amazing Mr Blunden has been delighting audiences for decades. Now with its release on DVD and Blu-ray, it's bound to continue for generations to come. At the end of the movie, Lionel Jeffries gives his cast and crew a final curtain call, a fitting end to a unique movie.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Say goodbye. Go on.
Cheerio, then.
Oh. Goodbye, then.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you very much. Goodbye. Goodbye.
Hope you enjoyed it. Bye. Come again.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.